Well, welcome to Gale Force Wins on Rogers TV. It is an absolute pleasure to be bringing you stories of inspiration from people that are doing really cool things. I'm Allan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Gerry Carew.
We're excited to have you come along on this journey. If you haven't experienced Gale Force Wins, W-I-N-S, before, then you're in for a treat. The people that we have on this show are inspirational.
And here we are, another edition of Gale Force Wins, and what a pleasure it is to be down on the Burin Peninsula, the beautiful south coast of Newfoundland. Gerry and I were down here doing some work with a client, and lo and behold, we drive by this amazing coffee/cannabis store, and I said, we need to have a conversation about that. So here we are, back on Gale Force Wins. I'm Allan Dale, with, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Gerry Carew. How are you, Gerry?
Well, I'm doing really well. I thank you, first of all, to you. We pulled you out of a meeting.
Yeah.
We're doing some work, as Allan said, and it ended a bit early, and we're on our way to Clarenville. But yeah, we just pulled you right out of a meeting, and here you are, lights, camera, action, Allan.
100%, Gerry. And we always joke with our guests, just say it's like we're having a coffee together, and lo and behold, here we are, having a coffee together. So, Taylor, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm Taylor Giovannini. I'm originally from St. Lawrence, Newfoundland, which is a small community just up the road, about 30 minutes. So I grew up on the Burin Peninsula. I then, like every other, after I graduated high school, went to Memorial University, spent a lot of time in St. John's, and this full venture brought me back to the peninsula. I grew up in a family of, there was 5 of us. I'm the middle child, family of entrepreneurs, guidance counselors. Sex ed was fun growing up. My mother taught it to me. Yeah, so I mean, from inception of everything, I've been just working in the family business and entrepreneurial spirit.
Tell me about this family of entrepreneurs. What other things were you guys involved in?
Well, I guess it stems from my grandparents. They built, owned, operated a garage and the hotel that's still existing in St. Lawrence, Ocean View Hotel, which our family, my immediate family, still runs. So I grew up making pizzas, making beds, doing all the things. And then we also, my father, RJG Construction, has a construction company that started out with one dump truck, and now hauling fish in the daytime and ice in the nighttime, or vice versa. And now it's a very successful wharf and dredging company here in Newfoundland.
So 5 kids, you're the middle one. What were your big influencers growing up? What were you involved in? My big influencers were definitely my parents. They worked very, very hard, and they were very passionate whatever they did. I played a lot of basketball growing up. The community sense, growing up in St. Lawrence, I mean, friends, family, it was always this community sense. So that was a huge influence of who I am today. And then my grandmother was also a wild one, we'll say. It was my mother's mother, and we used to call her Rock and Roll Nan. So
Rock and Roll Nan.
Rock and Roll Nan. She was that Nan who listened to heavy metal and didn't give Joe Jesus what anyone thought. So it was wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, she was a huge part of my inspiration.
And was she in the family house, or did she live close by?
No, she actually lived in Florida, and she's now passed many, many years, but she's still, to this day, every day I'm reminded by her.
Right.
I think I remind myself of her, probably.
So was she a business lady as well?
No, she wasn't.
No?
She just lived life very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Live life to the fullest, eh?
To the fullest, every day.
We can all learn by that, can't we?
Yeah, it's... I've learned a lot more in this pandemic to live life to the fullest. I can tell you that for free.
So tell me that now. You left this beautiful part of Newfoundland and you went into Memorial University.
And I did business.
You did business. Yeah, tell us about that whole experience.
Yeah, and that whole experience, I mean, I was 17, so it's hard to really know what you want to do at 17 years old. I still try to figure it out. But yeah, I did business. It was
a wonderful thing to kind of understand what life was about. You're living on your own, you're doing your thing, you're meeting new people. Then I dabbled after university. I actually had the opportunity to run across Canada with the torch relay.
Really?
Yeah, so I worked with a marketing company who represented Coca-Cola at the time. So we were the convoy in front of the torchbearer. So our responsibility was to excite the crowd and excite the torchbearers and represent Coca-Cola. And it was a job or an opportunity of a lifetime, because it was 106 days straight working in winter of Canada, right across from Newfoundland right to Vancouver. So that was in 2009. So
And you were on the road, literally.
Physically on the road. Every night was a different hotel, different community. There was 1,000, I don't know, it's around 1,000 communities, 12,000 torchbearers.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have met some amazing people.
Yeah, it was.
Tell me about that. What sticks out in your mind about that experience?
I think it was as wonderful as it was, we literally worked 12-hour days for 106 days straight. So that the actual physicalness of running and surviving each day was a lot. So you became really close friends quickly with this convoy of people going across Canada. Not to mention you got to see Canada and this wonderful place. But what sticks out in my mind is definitely the connections I made then. I still have really, really close friends
that right?
I still keep in contact with.
Well, that's almost like that same connection that you would have with those people would be like being on a high-level sports team or being in the military. You would have bonded with those. That's a big undertaking.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first job out of university. It was like, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and it was wonderful. It turned out to be wonderful. So then from there, I went into real estate and flipped some houses, worked for some family businesses. But really, there was always something that was like, I knew there was more. I needed to, and I didn't hit the passion. I didn't hit exactly what I was meant to do.
Right. And so how long ago was this you were in university?
Oh my God. Well, I graduated in 2009, so yeah.
All right. We're just trying to put a bit of a time frame on that. Sorry for interrupting you. You're making a really good point.
That's okay. So yeah, through working, and I had my son. My son was almost 2, and I was like, there's something more. So how did we want to get into how I got into
please
Oceanic?
take us down that.
Very important.
It's a very organic story and how it happened. I met my husband, and he was I guess my knowledge of cannabis before Oceanic was very much what I would assume a lot of people have knowledge on, very like none, and had a preconceived, understanding from false beliefs, we'll say. Or what I've been told growing up, that cannabis is bad, or if you smoke cannabis, you're a stoner and stoners are bad, which obviously I've learned different. So when I met my husband, he consumed cannabis on the daily, and I never actually seen him stoned.
Right.
So that was just one of those things, and he needed it for his ADHD, and I understood it and I accepted it, but that was kind of where it sat until we were building our home, and his grandfather couldn't really help us because of his arthritis. And anyway, so in conversation, we're like, well, Walter, why don't you take some medical cannabis or medical marijuana? And staunch Catholic, ex-smoker, all the stigma was just coming at me, and I just had a neutral stigma.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, so I researched on it, and I taught myself how to bake with it. I, at this point, still did not consume cannabis. I've just purely wanted to help. So I managed to bake some hash brownies.
Okay.
And within a week of him consuming, he was off his opioids and walking without a cane. And it was like this ding, aha moment in my life of, there's something more to this. So I started to research about medical cannabis, and lo and behold, there was a process. And then the big light bulb came off, is that Canada was legalizing it recreationally. And no matter if it was medical or recreational, it had to come from a licensed producer.
Right.
So I was like, I'll start there.
Okay, but that's still a big leap.
I know, it's a huge leap. And honestly, it was it was a crazy leap when we look back on it, you know. And
Well, let's go back to the craziness.
I say we because it's myself and my husband who are the crazy ones. I always say that I'm the dreamer, but he's the bigger doer.
Right.
You know, and he looks at me, he's like, Taylor, but you know, in this beautiful store, he did it.
Right.
It is beautiful.
He built it. He did all the tile. Laid all the floor. He did it.
I went around with a camera, so I'll show that at this point.
Yeah.
So were you living here at the time?
No,
when you
we were
decided?
not.
So
We
you
were
were
not
you were in
living.
St. John's.
So then I did, you know, like anyone would, a Google search of abandoned buildings in Newfoundland. So I did that, and then a beautiful article came up about the Buren fish plant. I was like, huh. Even though I grew up in St. Lawrence, I wasn't still like, it's only 30 minutes away, but you know, my culture to Buren wasn't really there.
Yeah.
So I picked up the phone, just cold called the town of Buren. And I knew at the time that the facility was a state-of-the-art facility, and it was only closed down in 2012. This was in 2016 when I was calling, or so, 2017. The only reason they closed down was because the company decided to process it elsewhere. It was just too expensive to ship, for whatever
Very
case.
common story in Newfoundland.
Very common story. So at the point in time, there was 125 employees, which I found, I was like, oh my God, that's devastating. But here's this beautiful building sitting there. So I just picked up the phone and cold called the town of Buren. And I'm like, okay, this is what I plan to do. Would you be willing to sell it? Yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to be doing, right? And they're, yeah, that's fine. If you supply one job, we're happy.
Wow.
So because the town of Buren was just so, and I always say this, and I mean it, that everything just fell into place organically. You know, I didn't pick Buren. Buren kind of picked me.
Right.
Yeah, and the town have been our biggest supporters since day one. So it showed up, and we're like, yeah, this is it.
I got to say something. You know what? Being in sales and business development for 30 years, a lot of people poo-poo the cold call nowadays, you know?
Yeah, no,
you know what? That is a great story.
It's a great cold call.
And
Cold call.
It's a real story, and
Yeah.
you know, I can't recreate that. And so we came out for our first kind of look, and we were like, whoa, this building is big. It's 63,000 square feet. Yeah, like it's not a small undertaking. But we were up for it. We're those crazy people.
But I mean, it's so Taylor. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story about revitalizing that plant. But now you've got to bring cannabis in.
Right.
And that's a tricky business.
It took my husband, Colin Escott, and his crew of probably 4 or 5, about a year or more just to strip it down, because there was pens left on the cubicles in the office. You know, literally when they shut down that Christmas, they just left everything and walked out. And nothing was done with it. So, you know, there was some equipment and whatnot stripped out of it just for health and safety reasons, but there was still a lot to gut. Mm-hmm. So it took a solid year to gut. And then we had all kinds of ups and downs with because we had an investor, and then the investor went south, and then I found another investor, and that went south.
Which is not uncommon in that business at that time, right?
I raised $4 million 3 times.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of speechless here.
Well,
I'm still stuck on that 63,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And not really like trying to figure out how to visualize putting all that together. My God, Taylor, keep going. Keep telling us the story.
So,
it's amazing.
Okay, keep asking questions.
No, so you strip the building down.
Strip the building down.
You've got, your investors are coming and going. It's
It's
a fast-moving place, right?
The cannabis industry is still a roller coaster.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, because I mean, we went from no stores to 8 stores. The story keeps going. So we, and this is at the time, so it wasn't legalized, but we knew it was coming, so we put in our application with Health Canada, which took over 2.5 years.
Wow.
Okay, the application was like this thick in paper.
This is quite a leap of faith, because you've got the 63,000 square foot building.
And if I can jump in there, Health Canada was trying to figure it out at the same time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so were every province. So NLC is Newfoundland Liquor Corp is our regulator, so they're trying to figure it out as well. So that everyone is just scrambling because, of course, I think as I recall, it was supposed to be July 1st was opening, but it got pushed to October 17th.
Right.
Because no one was really ready.
Yeah.
At the time.
You got all this money.
Yep.
So you raised $4 million. You get $8 million 4 times. What was
No,
it?
$4 million
Four
three times,
okay.
but I didn't get the first two $4 million.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So you were raising the money. You were buying the equipment, getting ready to go. Who was the grower in the crowd?
Yeah, so we have some local, again, people organically kind of came to us. So we found local growers and we found local talent here that are just amazing.
Yeah.
They're so passionate. And what you have to understand about cannabis is that it's been illegal for years. So everyone who is passionate about it have been in the closet about it.
Yeah. Right.
So once you find the passionate ones, they're just so happy to be free. And
Right.
and they're happy. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is literally on my doorstep and we can do this on a commercial level and sell our beautiful product that we put so much work into to customers.
But Taylor, still though, again, I mean, that's a leap too, right? To go from
Hugely.
growing a few plants to now you've got a fish plant full.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Tell
So
me about that.
there's definitely some automation. I mean, going from your basement to 2,000 square feet per room is a huge leap. And of course, we just actually cut down. We harvested last week, and we were comparing apples to apples from our first grow and it's night and day. Even though we were proud as peacocks a year ago,
Right.
but just the evolution to how well we grow now comparatively, it's
Is
amazing
the
to see.
yield bigger or is the
All of
product
it,
better? It's all
of it.
everything.
Yeah,
Better
there's so
across the
many
board.
different aspects. I mean, there's yield, there's the actual terpene. Terpenes are like the essential oils within the actual plant. THC is what people usually talk about, THC and CBD. Those are definitely very important components because it's a THC, that's what people worry about or are interested in rather.
Yeah.
But the terpene profile is really where we try to focus and make sure that they have those nuances in there to create really good cannabis.
Right.
So to give you an example, linalool is a terpene that's found in cannabis, but it's also found in lavender. So you know what lavender does.
Yeah.
It's just the properties that it's calming, relaxing, sleepy. So we carefully kind of pick which plant to grow based on that.
So how many lines of, how many different products would you be growing at any given time?
Right now we only have 2 rooms, but our phase 2 is almost operation, and that is to comparison, we grow about 1,000 kilos a year now, and we'll be up to 4,000 kilos a year when phase 2 opens.
And where does your product go? Who's your biggest customer?
Well, we are our biggest customer, so maybe I'll talk to you about how we got into the retail side of things, because we're vertically integrated.
And I got to tell you, from the moment I walked into this facility, it is just beautiful.
It really is, yeah.
The finishes and just, it's everything about it.
So, I mean, that's a really good. What I wanted to create it on, I knew that if we were going to create product, that we needed to create a space that created a retail experience rather than this transaction.
Right.
This is a brand new, we're never going to see this in our lifetime, a brand new consumer product.
No.
Or brand new industry, rather. I mean, yes, cannabis has been around for years, but I really wanted to create that, knowing that the stigma is still alive. We wanted to create that neutral, very comfortable, inviting space so people felt comfortable enough to ask the questions that they may not want to ask.
Right.
And then we also, we were the first drive-through in Canada. And I fought tooth and nail for that. I mainly fought tooth and nail for that is because in Newfoundland, I'm not sure in other provinces, but as a parent, you always have your kids, right? So NLC liquor stores here, you're permitted to bring your kids in, and like responsible adults, you just communicate or educate your child that, hey, this is just an adult thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't do that in cannabis, which I kind of understand in a sense because it's new. But then you have the worry of how do you, as a parent, receive safe and responsible cannabis? You're probably just going to go to the black market still if you can't physically go in.
Right.
I mean, so I just pushed for that, and the stigma. So it ticked off so many different categories. Okay, people who still have a stigma, they still have access to safe and responsible cannabis. Parents still have access with protecting their child. And then COVID came around. So that was perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so instead of curbside, we could offer the drive-thru. And then the other thing that we were not first of doing, but definitely sets us apart, is the coffee. We support a local brand, Grossmore Coffee here in Newfoundland, but I cared about serving coffee to normalize cannabis. And if I could get a bum in a seat, then we can educate, because education is key.
Yeah.
Whether it's the simplest of how do I roll a joint? How do I know when to stop? What do I do if I maybe took too much? You know, the questions that people don't necessarily want to ask because they feel like they should know, but how would anyone know? No one's talked about it.
Yeah. Wow.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, there's so much I want to dive into about the journey so far. I know that Gerry will be intrigued by the entrepreneurial side. Like, well, you go ahead and ask that, your famous question, Gerry.
Well, the thing that I'm always fascinated about is the transition from a paycheck to your own business. And I will tell you, every entrepreneur I talk to, and Allan and I have done this ourselves, is when you transition from getting a regular paycheck to having your own business, it is scary.
Yes.
But most entrepreneurs, Taylor, kind of gloss over that. Just take us to the point where the decision is made to do that.
Okay.
I'm digging deep here now. And if it's too emotional.
No, it's okay.
If it's too emotional, I don't care. I need to hear it.
Yeah. It came to the point with my husband and I, he's equivalent to about 10 men, you know, in terms of his work ethic.
Right.
And he's exceptional. And he was working for a lot of big projects in Newfoundland, and they all loved him. They all really loved him, but he was never home.
Based on that description, I understand why they loved him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it came to the point where I knew that I needed to expand my mind and do something more. I knew there was something more in me. And I knew that Colin was unhappy as well, so we just decided together, okay, enough is enough. He left Soldier's Pond, and we just took that dive.
But that decision
was
give us the 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. It didn't happen overnight.
It did not happen overnight, and we definitely had a lot of support from our families. Because, like I said, we lost our investment. So we had to remortgage our house.
Scary time.
We had to do all those things. We were looking at each other like, what the hell did we do?
Yeah.
You know, when, shit happens.
Yeah.
But, the piece of advice my father gave us at one point when I swear we were ready to give up, he's like, you're 100 meters from the shore. You're gonna quit swimming now? I'm like, no, I guess not.
What a great analogy.
Advice, yeah. Well, I mean, I can just imagine as you're sitting around the kitchen table or wherever that was, and you get that call and say that $4 million is gone.
Oh,
you're like,
awful.
oh my God.
It was
Right?
It was awful. It was
Equally as high as when they call and say, okay, we're in, right? So those are crazy times. A lot of times that you'd want to give up, right?
Yeah, and we like there was a lot of times where it was questioning our decision. We won stores, and then we lost stores, and then we won stores again. It was all over the place. But yeah, so on the store side, I'll just go on that route. So when we finally kind of got things moving at the facility, we were in chats with the government of Newfoundland and NLC. And I don't know if you guys remember the canopy deal that was, it's kind of gone away there now, but essentially Canopy came in and before legalization said, hey, we'll build this big facility. That deal entailed they would be allowed to have some stores based on production. So we got a very similar deal to that. So based on production, we received two, we'll say, flagship stores. So this is the first one, and then the second one is going into town on O'Leary Avenue. And then from that, we knew that we were in the retail side, and we knew that we were vertically integrated, but NLC then released another RFP for other stores in Newfoundland. So we went after them hard, and we were successful on another 6.
Wow.
So we are now, so store number 1 is Buren, which is the first drive-through in Canada.
Where we are right now.
Where we are right now. This is the home baby.
Yeah.
A lot of work went in here. And then we went to Port Bass for our second drive-through. So it's right off the ferry.
Yeah.
We really focused on rural Newfoundland too, because we knew that of course everyone was going to be in St. John's, and that's where everyone cares about. But what about the other half of Newfoundland? You know, I'm from rural, so like, you know, we need to make sure that everyone, and we also want it to be recognized as soon as you come off the boat, any boat, you see us first.
Right.
And we are the local brand. So Port Bass, and then we, St. John's East, so that's on Torbay Road in the Coker's Meadow Plaza there by Jungle Gyms.
Two East End St. John's boys here.
Yeah, so
we know it well.
You know it. Then we went to Stephenville. Then Whitburn is another drive-through. It's just on the highway where the old Robbins used to be. It's attached to Ultramar. And that's a wonderful store there too. Clairville, Bonavista. Did I get them all?
You got 'em all.
I got them all.
I mean, that's a lot of expansion too, right? So
Within all during the pandemic, within a year and 3 months.
And you're hiring people that you need them to understand, because as you say, it's about education as well, right? So you need to hire people that
But you know, as much as we hire very passionate, knowledgeable people, we also are not afraid to educate our
Right.
staff. And as long as they're willing to learn, if you're coachable, come on.
come on in.
Yeah.
It's got to be fun. It's got to be intriguing for me to be at it.
Every single time something happens, I say, "There's no way this is taking me out. This isn't the day."
My analogy to everybody is we need to work together here.
When you have a belief as an entrepreneur, you kind of stick to that belief because hope is everything. And, you know, it's the future ambition that will always fuel you.
You can do what we do here.
Love your family. Learn from your family.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
Live in the moment. But nothing compares to being, with my kids.
And has the pandemic been challenging for you to find staff and things like that?
No, I know it's very different.
Okay, I want to hear about that.
From everyone always asks me, because I know that there's a labor shortage. I know that everyone's really struggling. But again, I feel like because this is a brand new industry and the people that we do find are just wonderful, and they come to us.
Right.
They want to work here. So it's not just like any other retail job or any other, it is a passionate job for them, and they're happy to be here.
Right. Taylor, I want to go back a little bit and not so much talk about cannabis as